Tonight, Donald Trump's vice presidential running mate takes center stage.
As always, America's ruling class wrote the checks. Communities like mine paid the price.
J.D. Vance's message to Republicans, to voters, and to the world will have full coverage and analysis. Long-haul truckers in this country putting in the hours, but not being paid.
So wage theft is probably the biggest problem we're seeing in the trucking industry right now.
A CBC News investigation. And new U.S. border commands for Canadian dog owners.
We're gonna take him anyway.
What you need to know and when.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrian Arsenault.
Thank you for joining us. Tonight, Donald Trump's VP pick, J.D. Vance, spoke directly to the Republican Party, the American people, and frankly, the world. The keynote speech at the Republican National Convention. Vance wove the details of his own story, childhood, military service, and family, connecting it with Donald Trump's campaign message since Saturday's shooting, keep fighting. And on policy, Vance also left no doubt he is in lockstep with Trump as they make their bid to take back the White House. Katie Simpson is at the RNC to lay it all out. Katie, your takeaway on Vance's speech tonight.
This was a speech largely aimed at voters in swing states who may have had a very similar experience in life that he's had, delivering a message that he will remember the people he grew up with and hopes to win over those voters who feel like they've been forgotten by lawmakers in Washington. J.D. Vance's story is known quite well in America. He wrote a best-selling memoir called Hillbilly Elegy. It was made into a movie, and so he told his own story, getting a lot of support from the crowd as he delivered his message, talking about his challenging childhood, growing up in poverty, where communities where factory jobs left town, blaming Joe Biden, who was a lawmaker at the time when he was growing up. Remember, he's a millennial. The challenges that his family dealt with when it came to addiction, challenges that many families are dealing with today. And weaving that story, delivering a message to those voters in those kinds of communities, particularly in swing states, hoping to tell them, I will represent you if you send Donald Trump to the White House.
President Trump represents America's last best hope to restore what, if lost, may never be found again. A country where a working-class boy born far from the halls of power can stand on this stage as the next vice president of the United States of America.
Some of the largest cheers he received on that stage came when he spoke about immigration. Just a couple of references, but very tough on immigration in lockstep with Donald Trump. But I have to say, even though tonight was J.D. Vance's night, and will be the big newsy takeaway, I have to say the person who sort of really stole the show tonight is a man named Peter Navarro. He's a little-known trade advisor to Donald Trump, and earlier today he was released from prison, flew here till Milwaukee, had just served his prison term after refusing to cooperate with a January 6th investigation in Congress. And when he walked onto that stage, this crowd full of Donald Trump supporters, the MAGA crowd, they exploded. And so that really, while that's not going to be the key news headline, it really says a lot about this crowd and Donald Trump's Republican Party. The people here who are motivated and energized, that person who went to jail because they wouldn't cooperate with something related to January 6th, that is the person that excites and energizes this crowd.
So interesting. Katie, you also had a chance to have a one-on-one chat with Eric Trump earlier tonight, specifically about the attempt on his dad's life.
Yeah, and we he was in our area, the broadcast area here, so we sort of just sidled up to him to try and sneak in a couple of questions. And we asked him, what happened on Saturday, the attempt on his father's life? Has that changed his vision for America, and what changes has he seen?
I'm not sure if his vision for America's changed, but he's certainly changed, right? When your life flashes before your eyes, you almost have your head blown off by a madman. I think that changes you a little bit, and we saw that. I was watching that with my kids on a couch with my two young children as they almost watched their grandfather, my father, get killed that day, and we didn't really know what was going on for that first hour until he finally called me from the hospital, and then 48 hours later, I'm casting the deciding vote that puts him over the threshold to become Republican nominee for president of the United States, right? So you've got these highs and lows in life, and he walked out that night and it was beautiful. Everybody in this auditorium was in tears, and it was a very somber moment.
Eric Trump tells me that he's noticed more humility with his father. But again, the big test will come tomorrow when Donald Trump delivers his big speech closing out this Republican conference.
You bet. Katie Simpson, thank you. Thank you for all that reporting you do, sneaking past lines and talking to people. It's very you. Now, going back to J.D. Vance's speech now, let's take a closer look at the Republican VP nomination's message, its intended audience, and how it might resonate beyond that arena in Milwaukee. For that, let's head over to Paul Hunter now, who's also at the RNC. Paul, your takeaway?
Well, you know, I kind of pick up on what Katie was saying. Look, J.D. Vance has MAGA in his DNA. You read his book, and that is MAGA. And so, you know, the story that he tells, he's got a good story to tell. He tells it well. He jokes. He speaks regular talk. You know, he doesn't sound like a politician when he's up on stage. And I think that matters to a lot of people, not just in MAGA land, but everywhere. So, you know, for a rookie nominee, he held himself well on stage in telling those stories. But more to the point, his particular story, as Katie was noting, resonates extra strongly in places that are so-called battleground states, and specifically those up in this part of the woods, in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, places that Donald Trump needs to win the presidency. That's one of the values of J.D. Vance as vice presidential nominee. Let's give a listen to some of his message that speaks directly to people in those states.
We're done, ladies and gentlemen, catering to Wall Street. We'll commit to the working man. We're going to build factories again, put people to work making real products for American families made with the hands of American workers. Together, we will protect the wages of American workers and stop the Chinese Communist Party from building their middle class on the backs of American citizens.
You know, you've heard that kind of language from Donald Trump over the course of time. Donald Trump, the billionaire. J.D. Vance, he's done fairly well for himself with his book, etc. But he lived that life. And so that makes for what Republicans figure anyway is a powerful tandem at this point, both pitching that same message. But man, J.D. Vance lived it. So that was the essence of his speech, and that's what he'll take out to the country.
All right, Paul Hunter in Milwaukee. Thank you, Paul. So what did Vance's speech mean for America's future potential domestic and foreign policy? We'll go through that with our panel in about 15 minutes. Now, as Republicans unify behind their nominees, Democrats seem in disarray. Joe Biden just canceled a campaign event after coming down with COVID. And as Ellen Morrow shows us, a Democratic revolt against his campaign gained another prominent supporter.
President Joe Biden all smiles on the campaign trail just hours before this.
He just tested positive for COVID.
Biden's symptoms are mild, says the White House, but it's terrible timing to be sidelined as even more Democrats come out against his re-election bid. The latest, prominent House Democrat Adam Schiff, the highest profile lawmaker to demand Biden step aside. Biden has been one of the most consequential presidents in our nation's history, Schiff told the LA Times. But I have serious concerns about whether the president can defeat Donald Trump. Another high-profile Democrat, Senator Cory Booker, didn't go that far, but said,
I trust this man. He will make the right decision.
Since his disastrous debate performance nearly 3 weeks ago, more than 20 Democratic lawmakers have said publicly Biden should not run. But the president continues to fight back, reportedly lashing out, saying, I don't want to hear that crap, to lawmakers expressing concerns voters won't back him.
I know my head is.
And in his latest interview, Biden says there's only one reason he'd stand down.
If I had some medical condition that emerged, if the doctors came to me and said, you got this problem, that problem.
But many voters say they want him off the ticket now. One recent poll suggesting 70% of Americans don't have confidence in Biden's mental capacity, and that 2/3 of Democrats want a new candidate.
I'm deeply concerned that the president's circle, the people who, quite frankly, have kept him in a bubble for some time, are also not giving him the facts.
Despite the criticism, the Democratic National Committee still plans on nominating Biden virtually ahead of the party's August convention, critics suggesting it's a bid to lock in Biden's candidacy. Divisions deepening with the president now in isolation, off an increasingly fraught campaign trail. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Toronto.
In the United States, over the past 24 hours, destructive storms pummeled a path from Arkansas to New York State.
It was insane. I've never seen wind like that.
Those trees on houses, wires down everywhere.
I don't even want to face this because you don't know where to start.
4 tornadoes hit upstate New York, ripping the steeples from historic churches, snapping power poles and trees, and triggering a state of emergency declaration. In Missouri and Arkansas, flash floods swelled over streets and bridges. And the city of Toronto is coming back online, assessing the damage to homes and highways after yesterday's sudden downpour. In just hours, a chain of storms dumped roughly a month's worth of rain. As Jamie Strachan shows us, along with the cleanup, preparation for something even worse.
The storm was epic, record-setting in fact. The most rain in a single day Toronto's seen since 1941. Today, the Don Valley, once submerged, again full of traffic, power back on. And many, including Drake, dealing with basement flooding, parts of his $100 million mansion soaked and ruined. More modest basements just as vulnerable.
I just came down and just saw a pool of water, and I was like, what the heck?
Everything on the floor soaked and ruined.
We were just bucketing water out by the handfuls.
In the wake of the storm, division about whether the damage could have been prevented.
I'm not sure if there is a city in North America that could have handled that kind of rain.
Former Toronto Mayor David Miller says it's not always about spending money, but doing more little things.
When people widen their driveways, making sure it's permeable instead of asphalt really matter a lot. For a city of nearly 3 million people, it makes a really big difference.
There are, in fact, big things being done to protect the city from massive future storms.
It really is a one-off. We've not seen anything like this.
The billion-dollar flood protection project in Toronto's Portlands at the mouth of the Don River is being built to protect the city from the big one.
The storm we're talking about is just orders and orders of magnitude bigger than that. It's a storm that wouldn't hit every 750 years here.
The project has moved more than 1 million tons of earth, reshaped the mouth of the Don River, will provide new parks and wetlands, and, most importantly, protect thousands of homes and billions of dollars in infrastructure.
That will allow us to build, for the next century, whereas what was here was installed for the past century.
Preparing for a future of unpredictable and possibly violent weather. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
We have a major update tonight on the outbreak of listeriosis linked to recalled plant-based beverages. Health Canada says 2 people have now died. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency announced the recall last week for several types of Silk brand and Great Value brand plant-based milk. So far, the government says 12 people have become sick, 10 of them in Ontario. People across Canada are being urged to throw out the recalled products. Now to a CBC News investigation into a growing problem in Canada's trucking industry. Jonathan Gatehouse explains how some drivers are taking on jobs only to be stung on payday.
Lately, Saurav Sani feels like he's been spinning his wheels. A recent immigrant, he landed a job as a trucker, hoping the long hours would translate into a big check.
At that time, they officially give pay charts and everything. They said they're going to be paying this amount.
But after making 2 trips from Toronto to California, he's out $3,000 because the company didn't pay.
But they didn't fulfill their promises.
Sani is not alone. Trucking is big business in Canada, now employing close to 350,000 people. But there seem to be few speed bumps for companies that fail to pay their workers, even though these private firms are federally regulated.
Wage theft is probably the biggest problem we're seeing in the trucking industry right now.
Navi Ojla runs a nonprofit organization that helps truckers recover unpaid wages. Her team helped Sani send his complaint to Ottawa, She says the feds aren't keeping up with the surge in claims.
In the last year, it's gone from like 6 months it takes to start a case to 8 months. And now recently we're getting emails from the labor program saying it's 10 to 11 months.
Seamus O'Regan, the Minister of Labour, declined an on-camera interview. His office provided a statement saying it takes the issue very seriously and is working to strengthen the payment order system. Data obtained by CBC News shows the ministry issued 542 wage payment orders against trucking companies in 2023. This year, the pace has almost doubled, with 491 orders in just 6 months. CBC News also reached out to Hardev Tagger, the owner of the trucking firm that employed Saurav Sani. He declined to come on camera, but admits he owes about $18,000 to ex-employees. Money he says he doesn't have, but will pay back when he can. Sani says the missing paycheck caused hardship.
I was struggling for my installments, monthly installments for insurance, rent, everything. Even I have to borrow money from my friends.
And now holds out little hope of ever seeing that lost pay. Jonathan Gatehouse, CBC News, Toronto.
The future of the celebrated Snowbird squadron may be up in the air tonight. CBC News has learned the military is considering retiring older equipment, including the airshow jets. Marie Brewster explains why it's a decision Canada's allies may be watching closely.
They have been part of summer in this country for more than half a century. Canada's Snowbird Squadron, flying 1960s-built training jets. A symbol of Canadian pride that's showing its age. CBC News has now learned the aircraft may be retired.
The reality is the Tudor plane is well past its utility. There are even some safety issues that are deeply concerning to me. And I've received assurances that through this flight season that they can manage those safety issues.
The federal government has been warned for decades the Snowbird jets need replacing. Internal reports in 2003 and 2016, obtained by CBC News, said keeping the jets flying presented significant risks. The Air Force recently ordered another upgrade that could keep them flying until 2030. Other Canadian Forces equipment is also rusting out. The Navy's minesweepers were built in the mid-1990s. Defense sources confirmed to CBC News that fleet is also on a list of ships and planes the military is looking at retiring soon. General Wayne Eyre, the country's outgoing chief of the defense staff, in an interview with CBC Radio, says some equipment is simply worn out.
As a capability ages out, there's a declining pool of spare parts to be able to keep it going.
We asked the Defense Department for a comprehensive list of what equipment might be retired. It did not respond. But this expert says the upcoming decision is a political problem for Ottawa.
Our allies are seeing that Canada is effectively reducing capabilities because it simply doesn't have the money, the political will, or the human resources.
Both the federal government and the military insist no decisions have been made. Last spring's federal budget set aside $1.9 billion to maintain older fleets. But it's clearly not enough. Marie Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
Canadians hoping to travel to the U.S. with a dog this summer might have to jump through some hoops before crossing the border. New requirements would include a signed form from a vet. Georgie Smythe now with what you need to know.
Entering the U.S. is about to get harder for Mahmoud Bakayoko and his dog Isyam, but he says new regulations won't deter them.
We're gonna take him anyway.
Starting August 1, Canadians can only take their dog to the US if it's at least 6 months old, has a readable microchip, they have proof of a rabies vaccination, and they file an import form in advance that includes a photo of the dog. It's a big change for some owners who say until now, border regulations were lax.
To be honest, sometimes we've gone over and they've never even looked at the papers.
Ottawa wants things to stay the same.
What am I asking for? An exemption?
Health Minister Mark Holland says that because Canada is already rabies-free, the rules are unwarranted.
We believe it makes sense to have a policy that protects our hemisphere rather than having individual policies for two different countries.
People who rely on straightforward crossings are worried too, including those who use service dogs.
I cross the border multiple times a month when I'm traveling all over, with my dog, always.
Vets say they're already swamped without this additional paperwork.
There's a vet shortage, so having
a lot of appointment spots filled up now for travel appointments as opposed to sick animals is just going to further burden a system that we're already struggling to keep up with a little bit.
There might be some leeway. Canada has asked for a grace period and is now waiting to see if the US plays ball.
When we make plans to go, we'll probably find out exactly what the rules are, what we need to do. We'll just do it and go.
For many, the extra legwork is a small price to pay to bring their pet across the border. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Vancouver.
An American company is selling a knife that some say copies traditional Inuit designs.
Would have taken me double the amount of time that it would have if I wasn't using the Tot Chop.
How the company is responding to the critics. Next. A U.S. company is selling what it calls a modern take on the ulu, a traditional curved Inuit knife. Inuit groups say it's profiting off a design that is thousands of years old. Here's Natalie Pressman.
This marketing video advertises a kitchen knife that's good for cutting food into kid-sized bites.
Would have taken me double the amount of time that it would have if I wasn't using the Tot Chop.
I mean, we're the first people in the world to have this shape of a knife.
But those claims by U.S.-based company Tot Chop are false.
They're not an Inuit-owned organization, and they're reproducing our tools to make a profit off of it, right? That's why we're mad.
Oh, there's a picture of it here.
Inuk Ulu artist Ken Mackay and his father-in-law Joe Karatek know them well.
My grandmother made them in the past and kind of inspired me to make them myself as well. Connected me more with my culture.
The ulu was traditionally a woman's knife, still used as a kind of multi-tool.
Again, people's hands are different.
Karatek taught his son-in-law how to craft an ulu. He says it's unfair for Inuit to compete with Southern companies.
Today, it's really hard to protect the interest and integrity of who first designed this.
Tot Chop's website acknowledges the ulu's Arctic indigenous roots, which contradicts its video marketing. CBC News reached out to ask about these mixed messages. It did not respond. But it's not the first time a non-Inuit company has sold an Inuit design.
They should give proper credit to Inuit artisans.
The president of an organization representing Inuit women says Southern companies using Inuit designs should do more to support the cultures they're taking from.
They should consult with organizations before even developing anything.
Consumers should be asking themselves, like, is this authentic? And if it's not authentic, what are the ethics of me purchasing this?
Mackay hopes they do, and he's not the only one. The petition calling on Tot Chop to stop selling its knives now has over 200 signatures. Natalie Pressman, CBC News, Yellowknife.
Republican VP pick J.D. Vance made his case to his party, but will his message resonate with Americans? That's next. Celiac Canada says the prices on gluten-free products are skyrocketing, increasing by 200 to 500%. As Angela McIver shows us, it's pushing for help from the federal government.
But you can see it's much smaller in size. Right. And this costs $9.
For Heather Ewell, grocery shopping comes with a lot of frustration. She has celiac disease and so do her 2 teenage daughters, which means she's constantly searching for gluten-free food.
Well, the most obvious would be like bread and buns and things like that.
The search is also expensive.
We have a lot of food security in our house, but there's a lot that don't, and it is a medical requirement. And there's people that are eating gluten that have no choice because they cannot afford the gluten-free versions.
According to Celiac Canada, gluten-free products have always been more expensive than food that contains gluten by about 150 to 200%. But since the pandemic, that's jumped to more like 200 to 500%. And it's all because manufacturers can't get the ingredients that they need and they're making substitutions. And that means there are supply delays as a result. And of course, the extra costs are being passed down to consumers at the grocery store.
Ashley Hickey tracks every single expense in a spreadsheet. Both she and her 7-year-old son are celiac. In June, groceries for their family of 4, not including treats or takeout, added up to $2,600.
I didn't realize my grocery bill was that bad, and I said, wow, we either need to get, a rice flour farm or something, because this is insane.
Families can submit receipts for a federal tax credit, but Celiac Canada says it often amounts to between $30 and $50 a year.
The system that they've created actually doesn't work. It's cumbersome, almost inaccessible, and really gives zero relief to people.
Celiac Canada is now pushing for a flat medical tax claim of $1,000. The federal finance department told CBC News it would be inappropriate to speculate on any potential change to offset the high cost of eating gluten-free. Angela McIver, CBC News, Dartmouth.
Now it's time to dig deeper into the stories shaping our world.
I officially accept your nomination to be Vice President of the United States of America.
This is J.D. Vance's first night in the spotlight as Donald Trump's pick for U.S. Vice President.
Here he comes, guys. J.D. Vance.
His speech at the Republican National Convention, an introduction to delegates and to voters across the country. So what is his message, and does it prompt new cues for Democrats? So let's bring in our panel to give us a sense of what they thought of what he said. Brian Stelter is a special correspondent for Vanity Fair. Tia Mitchell is the Washington correspondent for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Tia is at the RNC in Milwaukee. And Richard Madden is our correspondent in D.C. So Tia, I wouldn't mind starting with you. J.D. Vance just spoke. Have a listen to what he said, and then we'll talk.
Mamaw raised me as my mother struggled with addiction. Now, she once told me, when she found out that I was spending too much time with a local kid who was known for dealing drugs, that if I ever hung out with that kid again, she would run him over with her car. That's true. And she said, JD, no one will ever find out about it. Now, thanks to that mamaw, things worked out for me.
So, Tia, working the room there, he's a good storyteller, compelling story about his upbringing. What's your sense of the effect that may or may not have?
I think that the crowd, as you all heard, ate that story up. I think it's very classic American to have like a no-nonsense grandma that, is very protective of the child they're helping to raise. So in that way, it helped him connect, and a bit of nostalgia, some humor. So it played really, really well. And again, this is about J.D. Vance relating to working class, salt of the earth, poor Americans. And so that is what his story is all about, making that connection. And it did seem to go over really, really well tonight.
So it's true. That was what he was emphasizing the most. And Brian, I don't know how many times we heard him repeat Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio.
Right.
Why those states?
Right, emphasizing these states. They're sometimes called the blue wall. Pennsylvania, for example, a state that Biden would need to win to get over that electoral college threshold. J.D. Vance is going to be deployed in states like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan. And you heard him reference those states because honestly, there's so many Americans who feel like the elites in Washington, the government, does not know what they feel, does not know what they experience. For example, Vance talking about the opioid epidemic and drug abuse. Those are really important moments for Vance. But I was also struck by him talking about his grandma having 19 loaded handguns in the house. His point was that she was protecting the family. We're coming a few days, though, away from a shooting, an attempt against Donald Trump's life. Guns are a big part of the story. Of course, the convention rally-goers were celebrating J.D. Vance's speech, but I don't know if the average American connects in the same way to what he was saying tonight.
Certainly, they're a part of the story, but they're not a part of the conversation at the RNC. We watched Katie Simpson the other day try to have that conversation, and it was shut down before she even got her first words of the question out. Richard, could we take a listen at a line of attack from J.D. Vance? Here's one.
Joe Biden has been a politician in Washington for longer than I've been alive. For half a century, he's been the champion of every major policy initiative to make America weaker and poorer. And in 4 short years, Donald Trump reversed decades of betrayals inflicted by Joe Biden and the rest of the corrupt Washington insiders.
The corrupt Washington insiders. So, Richard, what's your sense of this line of attack? I don't think anyone is surprised by it, but what's your sense of it?
He takes 2 aims in one line there. Number one, he tries to portray the Trump-Vance ticket as a generational change, a different way of doing things in Washington. But he also, of course, took a direct dig at Joe Biden's age, which, of course, is one of the president's biggest vulnerabilities. J.D. Vance is a millennial. Joe Biden is pre-boomer. So there's a huge contrast in age, energy, and style between Vance and the Biden administration. So everyone was expecting a few shots at Joe Biden tonight, but clearly having that come from J.D. Vance, who's half Biden's age and talked about some of these policies that were enacted before he was even born, I think the crowd just ate that up.
Richard, he also, I think I caught him talking about NAFTA. Or USMCA, USMACA, whatever you want to call it now. What did he say, and how do you think Ottawa will react?
Yeah, he blamed Joe Biden for signing on to the trilateral trade deal back in the 90s. And as you know, that was one of the most contentious issues in the Trump administration and the Trudeau government. And I suspect ears perked up in Ottawa when he took aim at it again, because keep in mind, this USMCA review process is in July 2026. So these trade negotiators in Canada thinking that this deal has been done and dusted, they could be in for some turbulent waters if the Trump ticket wins in November, and they take a second look at it following their win, because there have been several irritants that remain unresolved.
Brian, some quotes from J.D. Vance on Donald Trump, and people have been talking about this since he was named, which seems like forever ago, but it was not. I'm a never Trump guy. I find him reprehensible. How did he go from that to someone who said he would have carried out Trump's request to overturn the 2020 elections? You know, one of his advisors said to us, well, look, he realized he was wrong about Donald Trump. But what actually happened there?
Right. In 2016, Vance told me that support for Trump comes from social anxiety. I think he was right then. That's still true now. People are afraid of losing their place in society, afraid they're being left behind. And Vance acknowledged that tonight. He said, disagreement makes us stronger. I feel like that was a wink and a nod to his own past criticism of Trump. He was saying, let's have the debate. But clearly, Vance, for political reasons, has fallen in line with the MAGA movement. It's the only way to get ahead if you are a conservative in the United States in 2024.
Tia, interestingly, so he was introduced, J.D. Vance, by his wife, Yusha Vance, very experienced lawyer. Again, Americans are just getting to know her now. What can you help, those of us in Canada understand about her and how she's being received by the Republican Party?
So yes, Usha Vance is the daughter of Indian immigrants. She met J.D. Vance at Yale Law School. Sorry, getting my Ivy Leagues mixed up. Yale Law School is where they met and fell in love. Had a they mixed their religions in their wedding ceremony. She's Hindu, but she is conservative. She clerked for Justice Roberts, Justice Kavanaugh in the U.S. Supreme Court. She did speak. She introduced him tonight. I think it went over pretty well. I think the crowd there are some Republicans who were concerned that she may compel J.D. Vance to be soft on immigration. So neither one of them touched that at all really tonight. I think her job was to present herself as someone who could be palatable to mainstream conservatives. And I think, at least for now, she appears to have done that. But again, just by virtue of the fact that she is the child of immigrants, I think there are always going to be some Republicans who are skeptical of her and therefore a little bit skeptical of him.
Interesting. Richard, we've said it a lot. All of us have said it a lot over the last few days, that this event is not the United States. This festival is a Republican festival. There will be a Democratic festival as well. So it's sometimes it can skew your perceptions of what the reality is on the ground. And we know that there will be a post-convention poll bump. There usually is. But a lot has happened even before the convention, with the assassination attempt, the J.D. Vance pick, the debate. Any indications, Richard, as to how this is genuinely playing out with the general voting population?
Well, we're in a country right now where politics are so divided, where half the country is supportive of the president, the other half do not like him. And we've just experienced 3, possibly 4 days, and if you include in the weekend, of wall-to-wall coverage of Donald Trump, whether it was the assassination attempt or leading up to this political leaven that we're seeing happening in Milwaukee. So I think we will see some sort of bounce in the polls, whether that's support for Trump or whether that's voters moving away from Biden with the troubles that he's undergoing right now. But we're already seeing the Democrats trying to fire back and mute this momentum that Trump appears to be having. Vice President Kamala Harris put out a video earlier today trying to label Vance as a Trump 2.0, suggesting that there's no policy daylight between Trump and Vance when it comes to important issues like women's reproductive rights, supporting allies through NATO, their war in Ukraine. So whether this will improve Trump's standings in national and state polls remains to be seen. But I can tell you the very first Trump-Vance campaign event will be in the swing state of Michigan. That's right next door to J.D. Vance's home state of Ohio. So perhaps part of the strategy is to have a hometown Ohio guy on the ticket, softening the edges for Trump to those suburban voters in Detroit and in Pennsylvania and so forth. Perhaps that will give Trump the lift he needs in those critical swing states, that so-called blue wall we've been talking about.
And as you talk about Kamala Harris's video, you know, we were all taking notes tonight, but so was Kamala Harris. So were the Democrats. So was the White House. Brian, what do you think they will have to take away from this speech tonight?
They're going to focus on the signs that the rally goers were holding up. You call this a Republican festival. Well, what were the festival goers chanting? They were chanting mass deportation. Send them back. The signs literally say mass deportation. That is the weakest spot for the Republicans. That is the opportunity for the Democrats to exploit. But it is not, you know, an altogether, it's not guaranteed that that's going to work for Democrats, because more and more voters seem to be coming to Trump's side on this issue. Here's the question I always ask when it comes to Donald Trump. Is any American waking up tomorrow and deciding for the very first time that they want to support the former president? It was so strange hearing the chants of 4 more years. Did you hear those inside the convention hall? 4 more years. But Trump is out of office right now. We're in an unprecedented situation where he's trying to get back into office after being rejected. And it's anyone's guess if that'll succeed or not.
Tia, we have just about 30 seconds left. Forgive me here. As this is all going on, Democratic heavyweight Adam Schiff has called on Joe Biden to step aside. Joe Biden's having a rough day, right? He's, you know, now he's got COVID. More bad news for him at a time when he doesn't need it. What happens next with him?
I think we don't know, because after the debate, it looked like Biden was going to be forced out. Then he kind of fought his way back. Then things seemed cool. The assassination attempt on President Trump was just a few days ago. It seems like a generation ago. Now it seems like the rumors and the effort to oust Biden are ramping back up now that the Republican convention is drawing to a conclusion. But we have no idea where this is going to go. It's been nuts. It's been nuts. It really has.
Oh, yep.
Sure has.
You're not wrong there. All right, Tia Mitchell, Brian Stelter, Richard Madden, as always, thank you very much. Next, some Republicans propose a controversial plan.
So Donald Trump has picked his new running mate, J.D. Vance, and if elected, he will help implement the Extreme Project 2025 plan
But what exactly is Project 2025? We'll break it down next. What is the truth behind the noise around Project 2025, a radical vision to reshape the U.S. government?
And some of these changes are pretty extreme, pretty far right.
Most of the writers were figures from Donald Trump's White House.
It would greatly increase the power of the executive branch.
But Trump's campaign plays it down. Lauren Bird breaks down what we know.
This is the movement. We are going to be prepared day one.
You've probably heard of Project 2025, or at least seen it in headlines and on your searches and scrolls.
It is not a scare tactic. It is not a conspiracy. It is very real.
But what exactly is it? Who's behind it? And why is Kamala Harris posting videos like this?
Donald Trump has picked his new running mate, J.D. Vance, and if elected, he will help implement the extreme Project 2025 plan.
It's a huge 900-plus page document that outlines what more than 100 conservative organizations, led by the Heritage Foundation, want the next president to do, whoever it is.
Project 2025 is something that's going to transcend the next 4 years, the next 10 years.
And for the record, this kind of thing isn't exactly new. Think tanks and lobbyists on the right and the left often release policy wish lists.
An election is an important moment for any organization that has a policy wish list or set of objectives. So no, that's not uncommon.
Now, the group behind Project 2025 says it isn't affiliated with Donald Trump, and the former president has been publicly distancing himself from it, saying, "I know nothing about Project 2025. I have no idea who is behind it. I disagree with some of the things they're saying, and some of the things they're saying are absolutely ridiculous and abysmal." And his VP pick said this.
I've reviewed a lot of it. There's some good ideas in there, Rob. There's some things that I disagree with, but most importantly, it has no affiliation with the Trump campaign.
The thing is, though, a lot of the people who wrote Project 2025 have pretty strong links to Trump.
There are several people who were part of Trump's administration, part of his campaign in 2016 and 2020, who have shifted over and played a role in Project 2025.
Some have written entire chapters on what they think the next Republican administration should do to reform the government.
The people who are likely to be almost assuredly will be part of a new Trump administration will be the same people who wrote sections of this document.
So why is it so controversial? Some of the proposals are pretty standard. Reconsidering efforts to fight climate change, ramping up military spending, but some go further, like proposing the president get a lot more power. For one, it calls for changing who civil servants answer to. Right now, they're politically independent, answering to the agencies they work for. If Project 2025 had its way, those civil servants would answer to the president.
And that gives them a dramatically different set of marching orders. Their job in that case is to support the president's agenda, which would be an enormous change.
Some of the other controversial positions in this document, banning abortion drugs by mail, barring transgender people from military service, even getting rid of the Department of Education.
Things that have not really been part of the mainstream political dialogue for quite a while are things that this document endorses.
Now, to be clear, this is not the Republican platform. It's not even proposed policy.
It's 900 pages. There's no way they're going to be able to achieve all of it.
Well, a number of these things would require legislation, and there's not broad support for a lot of these things, like disbanding the Department of Education in the Congress, but a number of these things could be done through presidential executive power.
And analysts say that's something to pay attention to.
I think what this speaks to is the fact that these conservative organizations feel good about their prospects for the fall, and they're going to take advantage of this moment to achieve some wholesale changes in American policy.
The shows that led the Emmy nominations next. The Emmy nominations are out, so here's a look at the big shows in the spotlight this year. And leading with 25 nominations, the drama series Shogun, set in 17th century Japan.
Good?
You feel good?
Let's see. We're open.
This year's other heavyweight, the hit series The Bear.
Refire!
It earned 23 nominations, the most ever in 1 year for a comedy series.
Hush, little one, let me sing you to sleep.
For his role in Only Murders in the Building, Martin Short is one of 2 Canadians nominated for Best Lead in a Comedy. Toronto's DeFaro Wunaitai earned a nod for Reservation Dogs. And Ryan Gosling picked up his first Emmy nomination for an episode of Saturday Night Live.
I'm sorry? Me? You're talking about me? I have no idea what's going on. I'm sorry.
The awards are set for September the 15th. Thank you for being with us. Our coverage of the Republican National Convention will continue tomorrow as Donald Trump takes to the stage. I'm Adrienne Arsenault. We'll see you tomorrow.